Okay, so let's dive in. We're tackling a really specific, kind of intriguing question today.
Mhm.
It's one posed directly by this document you brought to us. Who is really running the village of Wapengers Falls?
Exactly. And this deep dive is all about that one source document. It's actually titled, Who is Really Running the Village of Wapengers Falls? And, well, it gives a pretty critical look at things.
Yeah, especially the internal dynamics there, right? Within the village government and specifically around the police department.
That's the focus. So our mission, really, is to unpack what this document says. Who are the key players according to the source? What challenges does it see? And some of the, well, dramatic interactions it describes.
Right. To get a sense of what this one source suggests about local government and public safety there, according to its author anyway.
And like you said, it doesn't really pull any punches. It jumps right in. It suggests it's maybe not the elected trustees, the highly educated ones, as the source puts it, who are actually in charge.
Instead, it paints this picture of conflict, calls it a battle royale.
Yeah, battle royale, based on, who dislikes whom less on a given day. That's the source's take.
And it uses specific examples, which is interesting. Criticisms, it says, come from the trustees about their own police department.
Mm-hmm. It mentions a trustee, Jeff, reportedly calling the police a lynch mob.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Walt claiming the sheriff's office responds faster. Then Bob suggesting the department isn't community-minded anymore.
And the source kind of frames this not as constructive oversight, but more like a rotating roast session.
Exactly, a rotating roast session, which the source clearly sees as, well, pretty unproductive. Then it introduces this figure, Rose, describes her as potentially bringing some real-world experience from bigger places.
Right, in staffing law enforcement, suggesting maybe she has a different perspective on how things should work.
Which kind of makes you think, or at least the source seems to want you to think, about qualifications. What kind of experience do you need for effective oversight of something like policing?
A fair question. And the source contrasts that potential positive influence with its description of the Wapengers Falls PD itself. Cites things like not enough officers saying they can't work enough hours, and then their behavior at board meetings.
Oh, yeah, the meetings. The source really focuses on the meetings as a key area of dysfunction.
How so?
Well, it describes officers showing up, shouting demands, calls it open mic night.
Open mic night.
Yeah, even using profanity, it says. And then it depicts the board just sort of caving in, making policy changes apparently without much analysis, or checking legality first.
So the source's picture is policy by shouting match.
Pretty much shouting, belittling, bullying, and then boom, a change happens. That's the dynamic the source describes.
And it points fingers, doesn't it, at a specific individual?
It does. It names someone it calls 110% Charlie, describes him as a police commissioner who resigned twice.
Twice resigned, okay.
But who, according to this source, still seems to be kind of running the show from the sidelines.
Yeah.
Calls him the self-declared expert on all things police.
Someone outside the formal structure, but with major influence. That's a dynamic you sometimes see.
Definitely. And the source really hits hard on the meeting atmosphere again. Gladiator games in municipal business casual. That's the quote.
That's vivid.
It is. And it describes the board members as folding like a cheap suitcase, lacking backbone, lacking boundaries, almost afraid of the department they oversee.
Folding like a cheap suitcase? Wow. That's a strong metaphor from the source for perceived lack of resolve. It even suggests, kind of whimsically, some trustees should just give up their seats.
Yeah, so just handing them over to figures like Inspector Clouseau, who it equates with 110% Charlie, or his old financial frenemy, Jen from down the street.
So really driving home its point about perceived incompetence or undue influence.
Exactly. It wraps up by calling the whole situation a free-for-all with a badge. It says structure and sense are scarce, and the board's too afraid to stick to any convictions.
And the final call from the source is basically for more structure, professionalism.
Yeah, professionalism, structure, even just basic manners and how everyone interacts.
Okay, so pulling it together, this one source paints a pretty stark picture. Intense internal conflict. Leadership that the source sees as weak, influential figures operating outside the lines, especially regarding the police.
Right. A chaotic environment, according to the source, where policy gets made through confrontation, not deliberation, leading to that free-for-all description.
So this deep dive into the source who is really running the village of Wapengers Falls shows us, through its author's eyes, a situation described as, deeply troubled. Significant conflict, questions about leadership backbone, and certain individuals wielding maybe too much influence.
creating that scenario the source calls a free-for-all with a badge.
And thinking about the source's final plea for structure, professionalism, manners. It leaves you with a question, doesn't it? Considering everything this source describes, what does it really take for any local government, anywhere, to function effectively and ensure public safety when facing dynamics like these? What are the essential ingredients for real governance in these tough spots? It makes you think.